My name is David Barry from Jewish Online Magazine, reporting from Old Trafford, Manchester United Football Club. A joint Kick It Out CST Maccabi GB event is being launched here. Think Again, tackling anti-Semitism in football and in the classroom. I have pleasure in presenting highlights of One Game, One Community.
Tonight's event is the northern launch of the Think Again educational pack, produced by Kick It Out with the help of CST, which is the Jewish Community Security Trust. Think Again uses football to address anti-Semitism and other forms of bigotry and bullying in schools. The pack, which you will get later, accompanies David Baddiel and his brother Ivor's film The Y Word. Both David and Ivor, who are staunch Chelsea fans, have been concerned about anti-Semitism on the terraces at certain grounds for some years. It's partly about racism and anti-Semitism in football, and partly about using football and footballers to address the same issues in schools. But education is always going to be fundamental to solving this problem. As so many others, we've seen there's no quick fix. Racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, any other abuse, whether in football or in schools, whether in society at large, is always a serious problem for people who experience it. Nobody can fail to be appalled. Whether it happens a lot or a little doesn't change the fact that it is always serious when it does happen. And whenever it does happen, allegations have to be taken seriously. Here in Manchester, we still record more anti-Semitic hate crimes and incidents for the size of our Jewish community than anywhere else in the country. At the CST, we get calls every week from people who've been racially abused or, even worse, assaulted, simply because they're Jewish. Too many of these anti-Semitic hate crimes involve young people, both as perpetrators and victims. We saw the racist abuse the England under-21 team received in Serbia recently. Disgusting, distasteful and sickening. We're all ashamed of it, but again, education is fundamental to ending such incidents. It's frightening to think that in school playgrounds around the country, racism continues because of skin colour. It's just as frightening that there are non-Jewish children calling each other Jew as an insult, when none of them even know any Jews. Normally, the young people doing this don't really hate Jews. They don't seem to understand the power of the words they use. It seems to have become almost a fashionable throwaway word. This is why the Think Again pack for schools that Kick It Out has produced is so important. Schools are places where young minds can be persuaded and lessons can be taught. Lessons that help young people, quite literally, to think again about racism, anti-Semitism, in fact, all forms of racial and hurtful prejudice. And this is where football can help massively. Footballers are role models, and it's important that during the weeks of action, as many players as possible all over the country help to promote Kick It Out's message, so that young fans can see that their heroes oppose racism in all its forms. Despite the recent press coverage, I'm sure that most footballers will. And if people are found to have racially abused others through racism, anti-Semitism or Islamophobia in any way, it's important that they're punished accordingly. That's possibly what's missing, but I'm sure it will come and come very shortly. The same principles apply whether the game is played at Old Trafford or Hough End, whether it's at your local school or university. This is the message that football is giving out to all young people who love sport and to young people everywhere. And this is why we're all here.
David Barry reporting for Jewish Online Magazine. We're at Old Trafford at the joint Kick It Out CST and Maccabi GB Think Again campaign. And our special guests are Rul Sheen, Chief Executive of Kick It Out, and also Dave Rich from the CST. Can I begin by asking you, Rul Sheen, the objective of the Think Again campaign?
Well, the Think Again campaign are educational resources to support our Y Word film, which we launched last year, looking at anti-Semitism within football. And it's a resource for schools to use to address anti-Semitism and other forms of discrimination, and how schools and how young people can get involved in educating themselves around this and doing some exercise and activities that addresses this particular message at the moment.
And Dave, can you tell me why CST and Maccabi GB have got this joint initiative with Kick It Out?
We're hopeful that by working with Kick It Out, we can encourage people to report anti-Semitic or other racist abuse that they hear, whether that's in a football ground or at schools, and that through working with Kick It Out with the Think Again campaign, we can educate young people through schools about racism, anti-Semitism and other forms of prejudice.
Can you tell me, well, why do you think there is anti-Semitism and racism on the football pitch?
I think that anti-Semitism and racism, as long as it exists in society, you'll always see it reflected in some shape, matter, or form in football. But I think it's important to really say we've come on such a long way in the last 20 years in football. We're not saying we've not more to do. Of course, we've loads more to do. But, you know, we've come far. We're working in partnership with organisations like Maccabi and CST. I mean, that's how, as a small independent charity like Kick It Out, that's the only way we can work. We're lucky that we're supported by the authorities and supported by fans and players and managers. And this during our weeks of action, which is our time to actually bring together the whole 52 weeks of action that we do all year long, is the time for us to promote the message that is, there is zero tolerance for discrimination, there is zero tolerance for racism and anti-Semitism within the game, and we need to be really strong in driving that forward, and we need to make sure that partner organisations, fans and players are helping us drive that message forward.
And is it important to get the support of the footballers and the fans, Dave?
I think it's very important because footballers are role models for young people and their message is heard by children in schools all over the country. And it's important for fans to know, firstly, that racial abuse is unacceptable, and secondly, that if they hear it, they should report it, and that the clubs and the police will do something about it.
And can I ask you all, is it important to start tackling anti-Semitism and racism not on the football pitch but perhaps in the classroom?
I think that's exactly where it should start. I think education is such a critical element of our campaign. That's why we're supported today, and we work very closely with some of the unions like the NUT. If you get some people when they're very young, this message is just so important to get to people. And they're the next generation. They're the people that will influence the coming up through the ranks, and hopefully they'll be the fans of the future. So absolutely it's critical, but it's critical about educating everybody from players and managers to grassroots communities and clubs. But education is a key component of everything we do in Kick It Out.
And do you get many complaints from Jewish footballers and Jewish fans, Dave, perhaps for being on the receiving end of anti-Semitism?
Well, I think football grounds and school playgrounds have something in common, that this kind of talk is often just seen as banter. People hear it, they accept it, they treat it as something they should just shrug off, and they don't actually report it, whether that's to CST or the police. And what we want to do is to encourage people to know that they should report it, that the language is unacceptable wherever it happens, and that the clubs and the police and CST can help them.
And is it a problem, Rule, that maybe football is tribal and therefore you won't eradicate anti-Semitism or racism?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that, of course, it's tribal. There's, you know, I'm a Liverpool fan. I'm standing here today in Old Trafford. Of course, it's tribal. There's a healthy rivalry, and I think that's what it's about. It's not stepping over that line where there's a healthy rivalry between clubs. There's always that there. But it's that step too far. It's that where you step into where it's about picking on people because of their race or their gender or their sexual orientation or their religion. That's the step too far for us, you know. And we would say also, no, we are an independent reporting bureau. If you hear anything, if you hear any anti-discrimination, or you hear any anti-Semitism, please go onto our website and report it as well. Report it to us. And also, if you're a fan, we've just launched the largest fans consultation. If you're a fan, no, so we're asking fans who are the lifeblood of English football, if they've come across any forms of discrimination or anti-Semitism, please go onto our website, kickitout.org, and fill in the consultation, help us drive this message forward that there's zero tolerance for this in the game.
Obviously CST is there protecting the Jewish community. There's no doubt at certain football grounds, Jewish football fans do receive anti-Semitism.
It does happen. We do get reports from different grounds of fans, and a lot of clubs are very good at dealing with that, and there have been prosecutions. And that's why we would encourage any fans who are racially abused, whether Jewish or not, to report it to us and to report it to the police, and something can be done about it.
John Paul, can I start with you? Why is it important to eradicate anti-Semitism and racism from football?
It's just not something you want in the game. We've got people from all different cultures playing the game, especially in our team. We've got mixed race, we've got ourselves, a big variety, and these are our friends. It's not nice to hear stuff like that.
Can you imagine what it feels like being on the end of anti-Semitism or racism?
Well, the only thing I can imagine is that it mustn't be nice, only because players are coming to do something they love, which is playing football, and they don't come to take all this racism. They just come to play football, do what they love, and just make friends really. And people are just very immature and just throw racism at them for no apparent reason.
Why do you think football is a problem? Is it because it's tribal?
I'm not sure. It's something everybody loves, so it's everyone from all over the world. There's no need for the racism involved in there.
Why is it specifically with football? I mean, do you find there's anti-Semitism or racism in your college, for instance, or is it just confined to the football stadiums?
Not as much in my college, but I know it does happen in certain colleges. But it's mostly for the football because of the competitiveness. The World Cup brings a lot of it. European games, especially when a team has, say, a lot of one race, they'll go somewhere, and the fans will then tend to only stick by that colour of the player. That's all I can say about it, really.
And do you think one of the solutions is to start from the classroom, the primary schools?
I'd think so, because if you teach children from a young age and then develop their knowledge of how it can affect different people from different races, it may give children a different view on racism, because some children just grow up without any knowledge of racism and they're kind of brought into it through football. And some of their friends may do it, and then they may go along and do it as well. So I do think in a classroom it should begin with young children.
And when you've been at a football stadium, have you personally heard any anti-Semitism or racism from the football fans?
I have myself, actually, yeah. It was only a couple of months back. I was playing for my local team, and a fan of my team shouted something to the opposition, and it was very racist, and the player reacted and got sent off for it, and the referee didn't know what had happened on the sideline. But we all did, and we didn't even talk to the guy after it. We didn't respect him anymore. Like, completely lost all respect, and we don't let him watch the games. We wouldn't let that happen.
Do you think maybe in retrospect, if you could turn the clock back, you'd have perhaps reported your friend either to the stewards or to the police? Yeah,
definitely. Especially now I'm doing this, kick it out. I would have rather reported it, and even though it's only one person, it still makes a difference. It just sets an example for all the other people who think they can be racist and get away with it.
And if you heard any anti-Semitism or racism in a football stadium, and perhaps you were afraid to confront that person, I think maybe Kick It Out, CST and Maccabi are recommending people to text the authorities.
Well, if I was in a stadium and I did hear it, I would ask the people, well, this isn't appropriate here. There is also young children here. They don't need to be hearing this. And then if they carried on, I would go to the stewards and obviously the authorities at the game and let them know.
And do you think the Premiership footballers are doing enough?
Well, some of them make special appearances at events, and some of them do as much as they can. Maybe others could do more and use the other people as an example. But you have Premiership players, throwing racism at each other sometimes. That's not what you want to see. That's a really bad example. Everyone is watching those people, and they're setting that example, especially to the younger ones. Like you said, in the classroom, it needs to be taught from a young age so that they don't just hear it off their idols and follow that.
And do you think Premiership footballers lose their respect once they have gone down this road of calling other footballers racial, anti-Semitic names?
Yes, I think they do. Obviously, a recent example would be the John Terry. Everyone lost respect for him, and everyone's wondering why he's still the captain of Chelsea. But obviously, the players at that club have backed John Terry up and supported his case, whereas there is evidence to suggest that he did basically make racial remarks. So, yeah, I really do think they would lose the respect.
And just finally, can you give a message to viewers of this video, an inspiring message? You know, kick it out.
Kick it out. Start young. Start them young. Make sure they know racism isn't the best thing. We all have friends who are from different cultures, and we have our own friends. We wouldn't like to hear racism to our own friends. So just think about what the people would feel.
Yeah, you just got to put yourself in their shoes, because if you was from a different race, you wouldn't like to hear racial abuse, and just imagine how it would make you feel. It would possibly make you want to stop football if that's all you was hearing every game.
Thanks ever so much, guys, for joining Jewish Online Magazine. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That maybe we took our eye off the ball. Maybe we thought we'd solve this problem, that with legislation and with the way perhaps attitudes had changed, that we had in fact dealt with this issue. I think if anything has taught us anything is that we shouldn't stand still, as we have done. Regrettably, there are too many incidents that are either not even reported, but most of the time people are suffering in silence. And then my responsibility and that of the police is to ensure that those cases that are brought to attention are dealt with properly. But also we want to encourage people to report. I'd rather have a spike in reporting. I'd rather have dozens and dozens of cases, because what it shows is people are then confident that something will happen. It's a real concern for me that far too many people choose to ignore it, just let it happen. And I think that's the big issue here.
Have you ever been on the receiving end of anti-Semitism, racism?
Absolutely. I mean, I was born in Birmingham, and I was brought up during the 60s and the 70s, in the time of Enoch Powell and the National Front, and I suffered sizable amounts of racism. It was we were easy targets, because we're different. And to my great shame, I didn't do anything about it. I mean, I just tolerated it. I think I wouldn't want my children to tolerate it. If they come across it, if it impacts upon them, I would wish and hope that they would tell me, that they would then tell their teacher, that then perhaps they would tell the authorities, because unless we challenge it, it will carry on.
I think the CST and Kick It Out are encouraging people to report these offences as and when they happen.
Absolutely necessary. It's absolutely necessary that people do not wait, and because it won't stop. Regrettably, the people who are capable of this kind of behaviour think that they're all powerful. They think they can do this all the time. From my perspective, if you have suffered, if you know somebody else that suffered, let's be confident. Let's do something about it. Let's challenge the behaviour, and let's bring these people to justice.
But do you think one of the ways is to perhaps be consistent in obviously meting out the punishments?
It's absolutely essential that we are consistent in the way we prepare cases, the way we prosecute cases, the way the judges and magistrates sentence cases, because if people think there's a bit of a postcode lottery, i.e. you will be dealt with for this in Area A but not in Area B, well, the offender will go to Area B. So we have to ensure that we're all dealing with this appropriately wherever we are.